And I think that is the biggest issue, is that it's literally just ingrained into our consciousness that, mental health is weakness, and it's not.
Glad to have you. I'm Carter Simoneaux, host of AcadianaCasts Presents. Go to AcadianaCasts.com today to get started on your content creation journey. From podcasts, live streams, to social media reels, we can help you any step of the way. A full turnkey service for content creation right here in the hub city, Lafayette, Louisiana, servicing South Louisiana. So if you're catching this out in New Orleans, we can help you out too. Over in Lake Charles, why not? Come over. Natchitoches, I'm not so sure about you North Louisiana folks, but, give us a ring. Maybe we can help you out in more ways than you think we can. Seriously, folks, go to AcadianaCasts.com to start your journey today in the world of content creation. Today's episode is brought to you by Love of People Nonprofit, from the Blue Monday Mission, which has the Blue Monday Jam every second Monday of the month, raising money for the aging musician population, also putting the younger generation of musicians with the older generation where they can learn from these Grammy Award winners and Louisiana Music Hall of Famers in real time, get some valuable stage experience, and be able to pick their brains. It's such a beautiful night. You got to go check that out. Also, right now is the Williams Bros Diaper Drive, the 10th annual Williams Bros Diaper Drive, where we're collecting all kinds of diapers, children, adults, all sizes, wipes, and puppy pads that will be donated to Acadiana Animal Aid, that latter. But this has been going on for 10 years. They've helped thousands of families here in Acadiana who are in need of just a little bit of help. We'll have a distribution day at 1400 Northwest Evangeline Thruway next to the Lafayette Visitor Center on Saturday, July 26th. Until supplies last, you can come pick up some much-needed diapers. Go to loveofpeople.org to find out about all the amazing things that they're doing for the community here in Acadiana. And speaking of the diaper drive, the channel partner for that is Alan Green with Greenhouse Psychiatric Services, and that is also today's guest on AcadianaCasts Presents. I've gotten to know Alan pretty well over the past few years, and this is a really powerful episode. He works in the world of mental health, and he opens up about some very serious mental issues of his own, and also provides some great tips for people, specifically men, who maybe are suffering in silence. It's a powerful episode, and it's one that I think can help a lot of people. It's something that we don't talk about enough as men. And for those women who are watching or listening to this could be a great tool for you to learn how to better communicate with your partner or a loved one, that special male person in your life. So without me rambling any further, all that being said, AcadianaCasts Presents Alan Green. Alan, you live in Youngsville now. Where are you from originally?
Originally from Shreveport. So I don't know, born and raised in Shreveport, Louisiana. Actually a little town called Greenwood, Louisiana.
Okay.
It's kind of like saying you're from Maurice, but I've been down here for about 17 years. So I feel like I've kind of, been accepted by the locals as one of their own.
And whenever you came, why did you come down here?
So I came down here for work. I was working for a company out of Dallas, Texas. And we were going around Louisiana, opening up branches of this company. I was the director of the company at the time, or the Louisiana branch of the company at the time. And I was traveling a lot. By the time we got down to Lafayette, I had a couple friends of mine that were going to med school, and they were doing their rotation here. I got tired of traveling as much as I was, so decided to stick around. And then, a few years later, it's when I met my wife, and here I am.
How did you get into, you now own Greenhouse Psychiatric Services. How did you get into the kind of the medical world?
So originally, I went into nursing. My goal was actually to become a nurse anesthetist.
A CRNA?
I had a couple family members that were doing that. And, I had a child at a really young age. My original goal was to become a doctor, but I decided that med school might not be the most appropriate thing if I want to really be, a dad or whatever, and decided to go into nursing to become a CRNA. about 3/4 of the way through nursing school, I went and worked with a CRNA, and I looked at it and went, oh gosh, what did I do? I cannot do this. I am too antsy. I can't sit still that long, and that's pretty much what they do. They put people to sleep. They sit there and they read the newspaper, and hour or two later, their job's over with. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Well, my friend's mom was a CRNA, and is one of the reasons why I went to UL to be in nursing to eventually go in that path. But she sold it to me as I pass gas for a living.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And I realized that was not made for me. So at that point in time, I went and started working in the emergency room and loved it. Fell in love with the emergency room.
Is that when you met our friend John Williams?
No, actually, I didn't meet John until I moved to Lafayette, which was about 5-6 years into my nursing career. And the company that I helped start up around here, what we were doing was we were inserting what's called a PICC line. And what that is it's a catheter that goes into a patient's arm and goes down right above their heart.
Pull up a PICC line, Luke.
And it's used for anything from IV antibiotics, difficult to access, vessels, nutrition even, so they can do that. So I did that for about 13 years. Yep, there it is right there. So you see that goes in on the right side right there where those little blue veins are, and it sits right at the top of the entrance of the heart. So I went around and put those in patients.
Okay. Wow.
And that's how I met John Williams. We were actually servicing one of the hospitals that he was working at, one of the long-term care facilities he was at. And, of course, he and I hit it off right away. And, over the years, our relationship has blossomed into the brotherhood that it is today.
So, throughout that time, you eventually get into starting your own business in Greenhouse Psychiatric Services. What is it, first off, for those who don't know, and how did you eventually make that jump to doing your own thing?
So the PICC line job kind of ran its course, and at that point in time, which we'll definitely talk about here in just a little bit, because it's part of the story. But I kind of got burnt out with that and started looking for other things. Was working with a friend of mine, one of the physicians that I was friends with, that was living here, and he was opening up a business. So I kind of got into the business side of things. I went back and got an MBA. And was helping him kind of open up a business he was in. Well, through him, I met some other people that eventually led me into my current business partners with my IV clinic and with Neuromend Infusion Center, which is the ketamine clinic. And the ketamine clinic, we were using that for treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, anxiety disorders. We're still using that today. I mean, that company's still, still rolling right now. But it was at that point where I started treating the depression patients that were the worst depression you can imagine, because ketamine isn't a first line drug. It's it's kind of the
break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever I witnessed the first complete 180, I knew right away. I was like, okay, this is it. And I mean, I don't know, this was probably about 10 years ago. And I knew right then and there, I was like, okay, I now know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I went home that day and I told my wife, I said, I'm going back to school. I said, I'm going to be a mental health provider. And so that's how this started.
Wow. Yeah. So you saw that, and you saw the help that you can give folks, and you've helped so many professionally in your time doing this. But I imagine that resonated with you for a reason. Can you take us into your own journey?
Absolutely. And, I think that that's why I think this topic that we're covering today is so important to me, is because, yes, I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner by trade. I treat patients for mental health issues, but what most people don't realize is that I'm also a mental health patient. I've battled mental health most of my life. I remember probably one of the very first times that I felt depression. I mean, of course, at that time I was about 8 or 9 years old, that I had no idea what it was. And, there was, times throughout my life where I've really battled depression, not just had it, but really battled it. And I've lived with anxiety. I've, one thing that only a handful of people, actually less than a handful of people on the face of this earth know about me is that, wait a second.
Take your time, brother.
First time it's ever been said in public. So one thing that, most people don't realize about me is that, since I was about 8 or 9 years old, I've dealt with chronic suicidal ideations. And, it's something that has plagued me most of my life. And that is why this is so important to me, because unfortunately at that time, and, thankfully, hey, I'm still here. And I will always be here. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that I will always be here, until it's my time. But, these thoughts are still there sometimes, even where I'm at in life. It's something that we're not taught on how to deal with or what it is. And at the time, when I was so young, thankfully I had such a strong support system all my life with my family, my friends, but I think that that's really why this resonates so deeply with me, is because I am part of this world. I do live in this mental health world. I don't just treat patients in it.
So I'm kind of fascinated about this, and hope and appreciate you sharing your story. But when it comes to, especially at an early age, these thoughts, how abstract are they? How on the nose are they, as far as wanting to self-harm?
It's at that age they were never really very exact, very precise. They were definitely, like you said, they were definitely abstract.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of just, thoughts of just wishing that I wasn't here anymore. It was thoughts of, not knowing what to do with my life. I dealt with bullying. I dealt with, all those things throughout my life. And, it was just thoughts of, it'd probably be easier if I wasn't here. As I've grown older, those thoughts have turned deeper and darker, I guess is the way you want to look at it. There's been times
more
where
specific.
Yeah, very, very specific. There's been times where I fantasized about how I would do it. There's been times where, I lay in bed in the morning and am so angry because I woke up, and there's been times where I've gone to bed at night hoping that I don't wake up in the morning. And there's always this kind of lingering thought of why, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this? What is missing? How do I figure all this out? And, it's been there, like I said, most of my life. And again, that's what really drew me into mental health and wanting to help other people.
So before we get into how you've helped other people and, kind of addressing some of these signs and in these thoughts and whatnot, how have you been able to battle that? Do you have, is there any tips or tricks, or for lack of a better term, of kind of facing these, or like you feel yourself getting into this spot or this state, this mental state? Do you know little things to get yourself out of it?
Well, I think my story's probably unique to me.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I have been fortunate that, again, my support system has always been there. I was raised in a really strong religious family, and that has always been a key factor of I think why I'm still here today.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned, and this is why I think it's very unique to me, I learned that through helping other people, that's my medicine. And that's why I really feel as if I was put here for this. This is why I'm so adamant that I want other men to hear this story. And that's why that I think that, I'm okay with being a little bit vulnerable, even though this is the very first time that I've ever spoken about this outside of my, my wife and my best friends. Mm-hmm. That's it. And
well, I've definitely dealt with a lot of anxiety in recent years, to the point of having like panic attacks on the interstate where I can't use my hands,
Yep.
having to use my elbows to pull the steering wheel off the road. I was able to pull into like a Waffle House. I couldn't even put my car in park.
Yep.
So I'm trying to wave people down like a T-Rex.
Yeah.
And then there's people looking at me like I'm a freaking lunatic. I'm like, I am, but help, I think I'm having a stroke. And then, EMTs come, and thank God someone finally was like, I think he's not being silly. Like, he needs help. EMTs come, and, I remember the EMT telling me, she was like, I was like, I don't know. I'm, kind of using my defense mechanism, which is joking and humor. I was like, how silly do I look? Whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, I was like, I've never had a stroke before. I had a buddy who just like had one around my age, and so it was kind of like in my head.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And she's like, "Oh no, buddy, you're having a panic attack."
Yep.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so kind of learning about myself through that, and I think I have dealt with some depression, and because like you're not really taught what that is.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while to recognize like what I'm dealing with is in fact a form of depression.
Yep.
Because I was just like not wanting to get out of bed. And I was like, oh, I'm just tired, or like maybe it's my diet. Maybe that could play a role in it.
100%.
But it took me a while to accept and recognize that, oh, I'm depressed in this moment, or dealing with this. And so, luckily, I also have a great support system, and I've seek treatment to help. I'm a lot in a better state today than I am when I was a few years ago. But so many of us men, and June is Men's Health Awareness Month. Mental health is such a big part of it. That's why we're having you on here today, and I appreciate you sharing your story. But why do so many men struggle in silence?
It's society, and I put the full blame on society.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it nature versus nurture thing?
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
are we predisposed as men to kind of keep things in as a defense mechanism, or is it a societal?
I don't think we're predisposed at all. I think what the problem is that from the time we're a little child. I mean, how many times have you heard your parents or anybody, even your friends or whatever, when something's going on, hey, suck it up, put some dirt on it, move on. We got to be the protector, the provider. We got to be tough. That masculinity, that literally the mask that we're taught as a kid to wear. That part of it has unfortunately led to what my biggest battle today is, and that's trying to decrease the stigma around mental health, especially in men, because we're always told, we got to be tough. We got to, we can't burden other people with our problems. And as soon as I tell you that something's going on in my life, well, guess what? That's now your problem. In reality, it's not, and I think that is the biggest issue, is that it's literally just ingrained into our consciousness that, mental health is weakness, and it's not. It's real. Mental health is real. Nobody bats an eye when someone has a stroke or a heart attack or breaks their arm. What happens when you have a heart attack? 15 people go to the hospital and come visit you and bring you flowers and gifts and stuff like that. But you know how many people come visit, my patients in the hospital? Very few, and that's the unfortunate part about it. And I think that it's just the stigma that we as a society have created is why now men have such a struggle talking about this.
It does seem like in recent years there has been a push to kind of remove that stigma against men, and it's part of the work that you do. And while we're having this conversation, is to further that conversation and removing the stigma. Do you think part of the society that we live in 2025, with the access to all the information in the world in our pocket, do you think that plays a role in the diagnoses of men with mental health issues, or is it maybe part of these conversations that people are seeking help more?
I do see a light. It's a very dim light right now, but I do see a light. I do see more men open, and thankfully, the men that I'm seeing more open are the younger generations, and that is showing me some hope. Because it's still a struggle with men my age and older. We're still in that mindset of, we can't show our weakness. We can't let that mask down and talk about our struggles with depression and our struggles with anxiety and stuff like that, but one thing I did want to mention is specifically about depression and how it looks in men. because sometimes I feel like it's missed.
Yeah, there's either by friends or a partner, even doctors and people in the medical field miss these things. Like
it's easily missed, because what do we think depression is? Crying, sadness, those kind of things. But when it comes to men, because of our mask, because we're hiding and holding and trying to lock all this in, it usually comes out with that very irritable mood, the lashing out, the things like that, withdrawing, overworking ourselves. That's one thing that I did. I was constantly doing something else. I was constantly, it's turned out in my benefit, but a lot of these things that I now do, all the volunteer work, all the, the companies that I'm in, all those different things, a lot of those were my way of coping. And because if I slowed down, then now all of a sudden I got to deal with my own emotions. But so that's one big thing. Porn's a big one. A lot of men revert to porn because we get that dopamine push, and it's just like, hey, a little bit of dopamine makes me feel better. So drugs, alcohol, just turning in on ourselves and just not talking anymore. Those are how things look in men, and why a lot of times it gets missed, because on the outside, things look okay. This they own 3 companies. They've got a nice house and a car and family, and everybody's successful, and, they got a smile on their face, but inside they're dying.
Not to necessarily play devil's advocate, but it's kind of half my personality. But could there be an argument to be made that, okay, first let me backtrack real quick. What specifically does your practice do? Like, if I wanted to go and seek like CBT therapy, you're not the person that I would necessarily talk to?
So
right.
I do at Greenhouse, we do strictly medication management. But we are, we have several counselors that work in a separate company within our office. We've got other providers. We've got a functional medicine provider at our office. We refer patients out. We do all kind of things, but Greenhouse specifically does medication management.
Okay. As far as the sit-down therapy, CBT, was it cognitive behavioral therapy? Could the argument be made that focusing so much on our issues and talking about this all the time makes us revert back to it and always thinking about it, instead of, for some people, going and being busy is the cure?
Well, that can be true.
Okay.
In a sense. Okay. When we start going to therapy and when we start talking to other, talking out of our problems and stuff, if we've been hiding it for so long, yes, in the very beginning, some of these emotions are going to come out. Some of these things are going to potentially get worse before they get better. That's where medication can help, and that's why we use medication a lot of times, is to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room until we can get to that part where we start to get relief from these symptoms. But what you said about covering it up, or, working and stuff, that's what it's doing. We're just covering it up. We're not dealing with it. It's still being stuffed. It's still growing like a cancer inside of us because we're not doing anything about it.
Interesting. Now let's talk numbers. The suicide rate in men is crazy. The disparity.
It's astronomical.
What do we need to understand about these numbers? What can you share with us?
I think these numbers should hopefully be a wake-up call for many, but 3 out of every 4 suicides is a man.
Is that in the United States, or?
It's in the United States,
okay.
Yeah. There's about 130-ish men that die by suicide every single day. So that comes out, I think, to about 1 every 14 minutes or something like that. And here's where it gets really scary. Only 36% of the people in America that are seeking mental health care are men. So we have the highest rate of suicide. Also, we're actually more likely than women to complete suicide, usually by much more deadly ways. But yet only 36% of the mental health population are men getting help.
God, you could just throw those numbers at me when I gave you the devil's advocate scenario. But
well, we got to cover all sides of this.
Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah, we're thorough here. But, not to make light of, there I go again, using that humor as a defense mechanism when I'm uncomfortable.
Again, and that's, as a man, that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We have our defense mechanisms because this is an uncomfortable topic.
Yeah.
And it's what I hope that this podcast is going to start to, lighten a little bit, and I think that's why I wanted to get vulnerable in front of people. And, it's not to gain sympathy or to gain anything like that. I just want other men that, I consider myself a pretty masculine man. I grew up hunting, fishing, doing all those things. I can build things. I can protect my family or whatever. But I'm also strong enough to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. What role does shame play in some of these numbers that we're seeing?
It goes back to the mask thing, and shame is exactly why men are not getting help. Because as soon as I come back and tell you, hey, I'm having thoughts of wanting to hurt myself. Well, why are you doing that? Why do you have those feelings? It's man up, that's why. Because the response is typically, well, what do you have to want to hurt yourself for? You're successful. You've got a great family. You make a lot of money. You do all this and whatnot, but you shouldn't want to hurt yourself. Well, now I'm shamed because now you just shut me down. And so I think that's where it kind of begins. And then it literally snowballs from that, because once I shame you, you're never going to seek help again.
Mm.
And I see that happen way too often.
Well, let's talk about people getting help. Like we said, it's a daunting task to seek help and to start some sort of therapy or acknowledge that something is wrong as men. But for those who are too afraid or nervous to start therapy, where can they start?
So that's the great thing. I don't want every man or woman that watches this or listens to this to think, oh, I've got to go to therapy. Oh, I've got to be started on medication. Sometimes these things can start with simple life changes. How many times have you gone to the gym, walked out of the gym, and felt better? Well, guess why? Because working out, lifting weights, doing these kind of things, they do the exact same things that the medicine that I prescribe does. It just takes a little bit longer. But if you're not to the level of break, if you're not ready to off it, if you're ready, to make a change and you're not so severe yet, which is what my push for this is, go to the gym, text your friend. You don't have to tell them just yet, but hang out with your buddy. I think that companionship, that brotherhood is a huge component. And honestly, it's one of my biggest components of my healing process. I lived in the gym, and every time I went in there, sometimes I didn't want to go there, but I knew that this was what I had to do to make myself feel better, because even when I didn't, even before I understood what it was doing in my brain, I knew that I felt better. Your diet. Sometimes we can change our diet up. Gut health. Inflammation in our gut is automatically going to lead to inflammation in our brain. So doing things like that, little small steps. We don't just have to automatically go, feel sad one day and then, call me and say, hey, I need medication. That's not what it always is. But taking those little small steps might keep you from having to get to that next level. But in terms of, once you get to that level, if you just reach out to someone, to just maybe bend their ear a little bit, you might learn a lot. And when I say that, I mean, call my office, or maybe you see this podcast and you want to talk to me specifically. Heck, DM me, I'm here for it. But those kind of things is where we start. Little bitty small steps each day to help ourselves to that bigger ending.
Yeah, I need to get back in the gym. It's getting rough over here. But I had such poor technique, and I would throw my back out, and it would discourage me and whatnot. But I've learned through the help of our friends over at Rise Physical Therapy and Sports Lab to treat my body better, and just what, no more deadlifts for you. How about that? Just
there you go.
No more deadlifts. But I've heard Rogan talk about it before. As far as mental health goes, and doing hard things. But if he can push himself to do something very difficult and hard in the gym, it makes the rest of his day look.
The whole day makes so much easier,
right?
And that's exactly what I think other men need to hear and need to see is that if I can do this one hard task, I guarantee you the rest of your day, not only is it going to be easier, but there are certain chemicals in our brain that that help to almost reset the brain. And when we work out, those are released. One specifically is called BDNF, and it is what helps to repair our brain. It's what helps with my favorite word. Oh shoot. We're going to have to start that over because I just literally just blanked out with what I was about to say. Oh man,
it's all good. I can cut around it if you just remember the word.
I'm completely blank right now.
Neuroplasticity.
Yeah. Yes. God dang.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, good job. Solid.
All right.
When we go to the gym, our brain releases what's called BDNF, and what that does is it actually helps to repair our brain. And, one of my favorite terms, neuroplasticity, that is actually regrowing neurons in our brain. And when we create that and we turn that into a positive neural pathway, now we're starting to get somewhere. We're starting to repair these negative, cycles, this negative depression. That doesn't just happen while you're in the gym. When you leave the gym, there's another 2 or 3 hours where that's still rolling. That's still building new positive neural pathways. And if we do that consistently over time, we're going to create those positive changes in our brain.
The other thing you mentioned was the brotherhood aspect. I went to St. Paul's in Covington, an all-guy Catholic school, 8th grade through senior year. And whenever I came to UL, most of my friends went to LSU. I was LSU my entire life. My parents went there, but kind of followed a girl and came to UL. Well, she was on the soccer team, so I never got to see her when I first got there. My couple friends from St. Paul's who came here were on the cross-country team. Never saw them. And so I was having trouble, finding that pack again, that brotherhood. Beyond just, texting some friends, but, they're living their lives, going to college somewhere else, or, some didn't go to school. They went straight to work. And it gets a lot of guff nowadays, but my mom said, you know what, go through fraternity rush. Mm-hmm. Let me know how, if it's not too expensive, your father and I will help you, pay for it. Cause she saw the value in me needing that kind of that brotherhood, that male connection. And, went through rush, and I was like, oh, Mom, it's like $90 a month. And she's like, that's it? All right, yeah, we'll help you out with that.
Let's go.
Compared to like LSU and, those other places. But, and like I said, fraternities get a bad rap, a lot of times good reason. But the biggest value that I saw in it and learned was that brotherhood, that connection. Having, some of these conversations late at night with some of my, my brothers about like, man, like without this, like, I was lost, and I kind of was in the same boat. I was lost, and this, found me a kinship that was really well needed. And as we get older in life, and people start, developing their own families, friends,
start to dissipate.
Yeah. What are, simple ways that men can connect with each other?
Well,
besides like going to the bar and meeting the
boys.
I
mean, that's probably not the best place to do it, but going back to the gym. I can't tell you how many friends I've made at the gym.
I'm sure Luke can attest to that as well.
How often do you walk in the gym, and it may not happen the first day you're there, but there was a meme going around social media not too long ago that I saw. It was how friendship develops in the gym, and it was like the first scene was they kind of head nod at each other, and the next time they see each other, they might fist bump or something, and the next time they're like, hey, can I get a spot, and then all of a sudden you've got a friend. It's just like, and so it develops like that. But that's just one example, and you never know where it's going to happen. But the brotherhood aspect of it is one of those important things that unfortunately there are a lot of people who aren't going to have that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of isolation, in this world, and that's unfortunate, and I've been lucky enough and blessed that I have an amazing, group of friends and that I can lean on. But, if you don't have that, like I said, Jim's probably the best way.
Sure, but that is one of the beauties of the internet, is that people who maybe are more isolated can find these common groups.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, nerds like Luke will get on Twitch with his friends and play video games.
Absolutely,
wee hours of the morning.
I actually have a patient in my clinic who I spoke with not too long ago, and one of the things that he did say to me was, "Man, I just feel lonely sometimes," and I'm like, "Well, I get it." I was like, "Well, aren't you in school right now?" And he said, "Yeah, but I just have a hard time finding, that I can make friends." And I was like, "Well, don't you play video games?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I got a ton of friends there." I said, "Well, is there anyone that you've connected with, not just played the game with?" He's like, "Yeah, there's probably a couple there, and I'm like, "Well, maybe we start there, why don't you send a message to that person, and just see what's up."
Yeah.
Like, that's how it starts. It doesn't have to be from day one, hey, we're best friends all of a sudden. It's, it's going to start small. It's going to start with that head nod, or if you're online, send that message. Say, hey, what's up?
Several of my very closest friends I've met and in turn met in person because of online gaming and everything like that. So yeah, attest to that.
There's a lot of different ways that we can meet people, and if you can, I definitely encourage you. And I understand it's hard. I was a shy person, and I probably don't seem that amongst my people here, but it's because I'm comfortable here.
Mm-hmm. Now, back to your practice and your patients, you've used like a functional lens with your patients, and you kind of mentioned the gut health and how that can a hidden sign that's doing some mental bad, for lack of a better term, excuse me. But what are some other kind of hidden health issues?
So that's an excellent thing to discuss right now, because I think one of the biggest key points that I want people to understand with this is that mental health doesn't always mean that your mind's broken or that you've got some sort of trauma. I mean, sometimes it is an inflamed gut. Like I said, inflamed gut equals an inflamed brain. If we can get your gut biome working, we're gonna help your mood. One thing that I've kind of recently been focused on is that our gut is not just there to digest our food. It's actually co-authoring our mood.
That's insane. When I'm going to discover this.
And so I don't have the ability within Greenhouse to do gut health testing to the magnitude that it really needs to, but I do have a provider that does this, and Emily is a functional medicine provider, and she does this extensive gut health testing if needed. And going off of that, I don't remember what the statistic was, but there has been some evidence that, I want to say it's greater than like 80 or 85% of patients with depression have a terrible, gut biome.
Wow.
And that right there speaks volumes of why it's important to get our diet right. But it's not just about our gut health. You look at some men, and you think about some of the symptoms of depression, the sadness, the lack of energy, the poor sleep quality, the low motivation, the disinterest in things that should be interested, in, especially like sex and things like that. Those are symptoms of depression, but they're also symptoms of low testosterone. So when I get a man that comes in the office and those symptoms are, spat out like that, I'm like, you may not be really depressed. You might just have low testosterone, which is leading to your depression. And that's where the functional medicine side of things come in. And from that point, they're going to get a referral to Emily.
What is the age that a man should get their T levels tested? Because it's such in like the zeitgeist right now.
Yeah, that's a sticky situation, and you know, if you'd asked me that question 5-10 years ago, I'd say, oh, you're probably good until you're about 40 plus.
Mm-hmm.
The sad news is because of, I think, the crap that's in our diet and in the environment that, you know, we've allowed. I'm seeing men as young as 30, you know, and even younger sometimes, that are showing evidence of low testosterone. And, you know, we typically don't start treating testosterone until your levels are around 300. But that's what the level of about a 60-year-old man should be. But that was 50 years ago. Today, we're seeing that as early as, you know, late 20s, early 30s. So if I see the symptoms, I really don't put an age on it. Now, the unfortunate part about it is once you start testosterone, you're going to be on testosterone for the rest of your life. So if you are younger than, you know, late 30s, I'm not going to encourage you to go get on testosterone replacement. There are other methods that we can utilize up to that point, hopefully, that we'll try at least before we start placing patients on testosterone.
What's in our food is such a relevant topic right now in the national sphere. You know, with RFK, you know, wanting to do these changes of getting things like red dye out of our food and things like that. If you were to advocate to like Louisiana legislature, for example, what are some things that you would try to advocate? It doesn't necessarily have to be food related, but maybe it can be, but in regards to improving the mental health of men in this state.
You know, to be honest, I don't know enough about that really to speak too in depth on it, but where my mind goes is, why can't I have the food that they're giving those over there, you know, across the pond?
Right.
Why is the exact same food over there got 80% less ingredients in it than what the exact food here has? That's what I would say. I want to eat what they're eating over there. You know, now I'm not saying that their mental health over there is perfect. I'm sure there's plenty of other issues that they're battling with over there, you know, but that's where I would start is let's get all this junk out of the food. Let's quit focusing on food for profit and let's go with food for nutrition and food for mental health. I think if we can just think about it like that, they'll get all that stuff out of there.
We love our food in South Louisiana.
Yes, we do.
What should we, you know, treat yourself, right?
No, of course.
The joie de vivre, enjoy the spoils of life and such, but you know, in moderation, I think is
absolutely.
But what are some foods specific to Louisiana, or maybe that's in our diet here, that we should be on the lookout for?
Positive foods?
Sure.
Seafood.
Okay.
I mean, we're in the mecca of it. You know, if we can incorporate more fish and seafood into our diets, those types of foods are anti-inflammatory. And those types of foods are component of what we know as the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet, it's really the biggest one that has been studied in terms of mental health. But the Mediterranean diet has been shown in mild to moderate depression to decrease symptoms by up to about, I think it's like 60, 70%, something like that, which is about equivalent to what medication does. So if we can just start incorporating more of that fish, more of that seafood, I mean, I guess you could probably put crawfish in there. So, hey, we're winning there. But that is anti-inflammatory. That's the key thing. Look at anti-inflammatory. Again, I'm not a nutritionist and I don't know enough about the diet side of things. Thankfully, I have, you know, people on my team that know more about it than I do. But that is probably one of the biggest things is trying to find more ways to decrease inflammation within our body. And, you know, here in South Louisiana with the, you know, with all the gumbo and with all the, you know, the rice and gravies and stuff like that, I love them as much as everybody else, but they're not doing anything if we're eating them every day, you know? So, but like you said, just everything in moderation, enjoy life, because if you're not, that's going to affect your mental health as well.
Are the anti-inflammatories removed when you batter it and fry it?
You know, probably not. Especially when you're, you know, when you're frying it in seed oils and all of that.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse for our bodies than these seed oils. I don't know if you've ever watched a seed oil being made, but It is absolutely disgusting.
It's so gross.
And yeah, I mean, and
I was just telling you the other day that I finally got on that Yuka app. And so I've been scanning all of my food.
Oh, I love that thing.
It scares the hell out of me. Everything.
Yes, everything. There's hardly anything, unfortunately, in today's
mass produced,
profit driven world that unfortunately includes our food that we eat, and that does have a huge impact on the inflammation within our bodies. And unfortunately, I don't see any way out of it unless you go out and catch your own or do all of that.
Greedy ass corporations. The gut health thing, kind of going back to that real quick, it just reminded me that I made the mistake recently of scrolling through Instagram, and I saw an ad for something that says, it's not beer belly, it's cortisol belly. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's not the beer? Please tell me more so I can continue that lifestyle. But, learning a little bit about, the cortisol.
Yes.
Can you explain?
So cortisol is a stress hormone. Mm-hmm. I like to explain cortisol to people of, think about it like coffee. All right. A couple cups of coffee, probably actually beneficial for our bodies. Okay. Cortisol can help to reduce stress. It can help to give us a little bit of energy. It can help us stay, help our wakeful cycle. It does help with our mood as well. But the problem is what happens when you drink 9 cups of coffee or 10 cups of coffee or, 3 energy drinks in a day that are all 200 plus milligrams of caffeine.
I go really fast. Mind your business.
Well, unfortunately, when we're looking at the the recommended allowance of caffeine, we're just a little bit too overboard with it. So if you think about cortisol in the same way of way too much caffeine, way too much caffeine is just going to cause us this inflammation. It's going to cause the stress. It's going to cause the anxiety. And the problem is that when this is done over and over and over on a daily basis, and that cortisol level never has an opportunity to come down because we're only sleeping 3 hours a night, and we're eating fried food every day, and we're drinking 800 to 900 milligrams of caffeine per day. We're never letting that cortisol come down, so we're constantly at an elevated level. Well, unfortunately, one of the bad things about cortisol is when it's at that level, it's literally breaking our brains down. And those, those neural pathways that we were talking about, creating and building positive, well, cortisol is blunting all of that and the ability for our brain to actually repair ourselves.
Wow. Well, I know we want to give kind of a message to folks dealing with these mental issues, but before we get to that, I want to talk to you about some of the practices that you're kind of in that world. And you mentioned earlier ketamine as a treatment option. And I feel like still to this day, you're feeling the effects of the war on drugs and some of the propaganda that was pushed out, that we're still kind of feeling that. And when you hear the word ketamine in treatment, or you hear psilocybin treating like PTSD, yep. A lot of people, especially those who grew up in that era of real disinformation, they kind of scoff at it like, oh, no, that's terrible. But what have you seen, and are you an advocate for these, I guess, non-traditional means of help?
I cannot wait until the FDA gets out of our way and allows us to start utilizing these natural substances like psilocybin that are grown right out of the earth, that have been shown time and time and time again to be beneficial when used appropriately. That's where I become the advocate, is as a mental health provider that understands what these medications, for PC, but the changes that these things make in our brain, ketamine, psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, all of these substances have been shown to actually go in, and again, going back to that neurogenesis, they have been shown to create new neural pathways. Now you take that and you combine it with therapy, and you are now creating positive neural pathways in parts of our brain that have been just completely broken down for years, if not decades. And those are the patients that we see that medication doesn't work, or, we call them difficult to treat symptoms, like difficult to treat depression, difficult to treat PTSD. They used to be called treatment resistant depression. But that is where we're now starting to create these new pathways that allow things like exercise and medicine and counseling to actually start doing the job that it was intended to do.
This is, FDA, get out the way. Let's every government agency, in my opinion. But
I'm probably gonna lose my license if this gets too far out.
Well, it should be a state issue, and it should be decided by folks like you who are in the field doing this work and seeing the impact that these things are having on people, to give them the option, in a responsible manner.
Yeah, I've got a patient right now that we're fighting, and we're trying to get him into to be able to do ketamine, but he's currently in the military, and unfortunately, militaries, their hands are tied by the government, and he can't get it until he gets out of the military. And I know that's not the same for everybody that's in the military, but this particular patient and his job, they will not allow him to get ketamine when I have tried, I don't even know, upwards of 10 different medications on this patient, and we're just kind of just keeping him on that, that the cusp of getting better, but we just can't quite get there. I know ketamine will do it. I have no doubt in my mind. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. I can't get him there.
Scientifically, what is ketamine? All I know of it is it's been referred to as horse tranquilizer.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part. And I wish that so you look at what it was used for originally. It was created. I think it was created back in like the 30s or 40s, or maybe even earlier than that. But it was created to kind of help soldiers on the battlefield that needed to be moved, or they needed to do some sort of, procedure right there on the battlefield. So if you give someone ketamine, what does it do? It tranquilizes them. Yeah. If you give them all of it right there at one time, well, imagine, when you have surgery or whatever, and you start to, they give you the sedation and your respiratory drive goes away, and now they have to intubate you. Imagine having to intubate a horse. That's where ketamine became used for horses, because it's almost impossible to intubate a horse while you got to do a procedure on a horse. But it wasn't created for horses; it was created for us. And then society has now said, "Oh, that's a horse tranquilizer." Well, yeah, of course it's a horse tranquilizer because it works, but in low doses, given over an extended period of time, it doesn't tranquilize us. It doesn't even put us to sleep. It puts us into a very blissful state that allows our bodies to heal. That's what people need to understand, is it can be used for, look, it's on the World Health's 20 most essential medications. Come on, and I think we all know of, you mentioned Joe Rogan a while ago. We all know of a medication that was on the World Health, essential medication list that he kind of got, beat up about. But
ivermectin.
Yep. Ketamine's the same way. It's got this bad rep. And it's unfortunate because it is beautiful. I've personally witnessed it change dozens and dozens and dozens of lives. It's literally the reason that I am in the position that I am in today with my career, is because I watched it change people's lives over and over again. And I knew I wanted to do that for the rest of my life.
Well, what would you say right now to a man who's listening to this episode and he's close to giving up?
First and foremost, you're not broken. You're not damaged. There's a possibility it wasn't even your fault that you're feeling this way. But just understand there is hope. There is a way out. There are people that care, even strangers that care about you. I'm one of them. I know there's someone listening right now that I've never met. I've never laid eyes on, I've never spoken to, but I already care about them because I know that they're feeling what I felt. And if I had to say anything, it would be, I'm still here. So can you.
Beautifully said. And we focused on, of course, the fellas this episode, but I want to give a message to the women in our lives, our mothers, sisters, friends, girlfriends, wives, fiancés, whatever have you. How can they help without pushing too hard, and what should they look for in their partners?
I think you said it. You said it great. How can they push without pushing too hard? And that is the first thing that I want to emphasize is be gentle, because until their vulnerability has been lessened, until they get to a comfortable state, their ego is not going to allow someone to push too hard. So be gentle. And if I had to say one thing, and the most important thing that I would say to any woman, whether it's mom, spouse, sister, friend, ask. If you notice that some man in your life is just a little off, that something's just not normal about that person right now, ask.
Women tend to be a little more perceptive than us fellas.
Absolutely. But what I really want to emphasize is ask, and then ask, and then ask. Okay? Because that done in a gentle manner is going to eventually allow a man to open up. And that is what we need to focus on. Don't come at a man, well, you are this way, you're acting like this. Just say, I've noticed that, you're a little bit off, or I've noticed that your mind's not in the same place that it used to be. I don't want to fix you, because that's big. Don't try to fix your man. Don't try to fix the man in your life. Let me do that. Let me work on that later on. Let the counselor try to do that. Just open the door for that person, because right now they see themselves as this unbreakable rock. But if you ask, and you ask, you might just make a crack in that rock that allows them to be able to open up at a later time. So if you can just approach it gently, I think that's gonna be very important, is just be gentle, ask, and don't try to fix them. Just let them know that you're there. Let them know that you hear them, that you see them. And I think a lot of men, that's just what they want. They want to be heard. They want to know that they're not alone, And I think that, going back to my story, is for decades of my life, I just felt alone. And of course I didn't have, the knowledge about mental health that I have now, but I was scared to reach out to anybody. I was scared to talk about it, because of course I had the same mask over my face. I was raised with a very loving, but very stern father. And, he taught me to be tough. He taught me to, to not put my burdens on other people. And that mask stuck with me for a very long time. And, it wasn't until I finally became comfortable with, with my current support system, that I felt okay being able to open up. And it's because, my wife didn't push. She was just there, and she listened.
Shout out Shonda, and shout out you for coming on this and being open and vulnerable and sharing your story, and for fighting that good fight for the men out there here in Acadiana. And hopefully this can reach folks outside of it. It's the beauty of the internet. We're gonna have all in the show description, in the show notes. We're gonna have all kind of different resources, plus your business as well, that people can go and find. Just off the top of your head, is there anything that you can plug?
I think the most important thing that anybody can remember is 988. Okay, this is the suicide hotline, 988. You can call it, you can text it, and the people on the other side of that hotline are not just, medical providers. There probably aren't any medical providers out there. They're people that have been there. They're people that understand what you might be going through at that moment, and they're just there to talk. That's probably the one most important number that I wish people would understand. And they just recently changed their number to 988 to make it a little bit easier to remember. But if you're having those negative thoughts and you don't know where to go, you don't know where to get help, and you don't even know if you need help yet, call or text 988.
You can also call 337-247-7282. That is 337-247-7282. Greenhouse Psychiatric Services. Alan would love to see you and love to help you get your mental health journey going in the right positive direction. Alan, once again, thanks for coming on the show. We end the show the same every single episode. You take a look at your single camera right there, and I know you've been given messages of hope this entire episode, but this is one last time for you to plug your business, give a message of hope, any words of wisdom, any quote, a phrase, anything that you want to end this episode with to end the episode and part on the internet world at large. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. And, I wore this shirt on purpose because this is shameless plug. This is my daughter's company. She opened up a company called Fearless Christian Designs, and that's exactly the reason I wore this shirt is because what I want men to understand is that we need to fear less, not be fearless, just fear less. And if we can do that and reach out to one person, take that one little small step today, you're going to get better. You will.
Thanks for checking out this week's episode of AcadianaCasts Presents. Make sure to follow us, subscribe, be a part of the AcadianaCasts family wherever you're checking out this show. And if you liked what you saw or you liked what you heard from today's episode and you want to get involved in content creation or up your already ongoing projects, go to AcadianaCasts.com to get started. We can help you from podcasts to live streams to social media reels, some graphic design and animation. Wherever you are in your content creation journey, we can help you out. Go to AcadianaCasts.com to learn more, and we'll see you next time here on AcadianaCasts Presents.